Why do they bury Germans 20 meters underground? Because deep down, they really are nice. And what is the difference between a Polish wedding and a Polish funeral? You have one less drunk at the funeral. Funny, huh? But we'll get back to that later. I'm sure that most of you have heard about Maslow's pyramid at least once. Maybe you even know the different levels of it. However, today, I want to focus on the need of belonging. We can fulfill the need by having a close relationship with our family, bonding with our friends, or belonging to a close community like the community of students at our school. And although I can tick all these requirements, I feel that a certain part of my sense of belonging is missing. My life can be divided into two significant parts: my lack of sense of national identity in Germany and my lack of sense of national identity in Poland. I've spent over the half of my life in Germany, a relatively small village, around 8,000 residents, with beautiful views surrounded by idyllic lakes, mountains, with clean air, and a very close-knit community. One could say this sounds like the description of a dream. For me, however, it was the complete opposite. And most of the time, I really wanted to leave that place. While living there, I was often called a Polish cleaner, but not in the harmless description of a job kind of way or in the heat of an argument. Those were the kinds of comments I had to deal with at least 3 times a week. I never understood, and I don't think I ever will understand, what about my way of being triggered people so badly. But I hope you can see now why someone doesn't want to live in a place where they're not accepted in and where they're seen as an intruder. My biggest wish at that time was being welcomed into the community I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in. And believe me, that little girl was able to do so many things just for an approving look from her peers. She would renounce her Polishness when being asked about her nationality, or she would even laugh at those terrible jokes made about drunk Polish people. I was ready to do many things, despite of being only 10. And now I find it quite funny how I was able to deny an inherent part of myself, my Polish part, just for the approval of children I often didn't even like. After moving to Poland, I was sure that everything's going to change. Well, I know I got you all rooting for me by now, but it's not only my disappointment then, but also to yours today. The feeling of being an imposter didn't go away. I wanted to move back and had the weird feeling of homesickness in my stomach. Before moving to Poland, I had no idea how Germans were perceived over here. But I pretty soon found out that apparently all Germans drink only beer, and a big part of society still believes in the ideologies which were spread by the NSDAP in the 1930s. Moreover, I was very often asked questions regarding very detailed comparisons of the two countries I've lived in. And every time I got asked that question, I knew exactly that the person who was asking me was expecting an answer in which I just confirmed that the country the person lives in was the best option to choose. And the people needed constant reassurance that the country they willingly chose to live in was the best decision they could have made. And all those assumptions and comparisons, they were building a wall that is only seen by people who have to deal with those stigmas on a daily basis. And that wall is and will be something I will be running into every other time. So why are we building walls instead of creating alliances and opportunities for people to learn and to get broader knowledge about solutions to problems which are global? A former teacher of mine once said, "Children are like a litmus paper. They get put into a certain environment and adapt to it, often changing their color and way of being." That quote opened my eyes because it made me realize that a lot of the hate I had received before had been the influence of the parents and the environment the children grew up in. And maybe I am making up excuses for all the cruelties I had to deal with, but I won't ever make peace with the fact that an 8-year-old child could actually feel hatred and disgust towards foreigners. So if we all started to educate not only ourselves more, but also the people younger and older than us, we could not only eradicate such behaviors, but also make children way more tolerant and accepting. About a year ago, I came across the word global citizen. It is a trend that describes open-mindedness towards new cultures, the rejection of stigmatizations, and generally identifying as a citizen of the world and not just one country. There was a study called GlobeScan, which was carried out by BBC in 2015, in which over 200,000 people from 16 countries were asked whether they see themselves as global citizens. And actually, over 51% of the surveyed answered that they rather see themselves as citizens of the earth and not just one nation or like one particular part of the world. And of course, every study has its limitations, and I'm absolutely not denying it. However, in comparison to the same study 3 years earlier, the percentage of people identifying as global citizens had risen by 20%. So since traveling has been on a popular way for X years now, and people are migrating now more than ever, why haven't we adjusted to the new way of living yet? There's so much we can learn from each other. For example, Polish people could learn from the Germans how to have independent courts, and the Germans could learn from the Polish in terms of their education system, for example. If we all started to pay way more attention to what we say, why we say it, and how we say it, we could not only prevent faux pas in public settings, but also making people feel extremely uncomfortable and unwelcome in our surroundings. You know, there was always the question of why I didn't belong. But there was and is a pretty simple answer to that. I didn't belong because I was never seen as a fusion of two cultures, two ways of being, and two histories. I always had to lock a certain part of myself up, put it to the side, with the hope of it not being noticed or acknowledged. If we all start seeing each other as a fusion of experiences, histories, and families, we could all not only feel way more understanding and acceptance in our environment, but it is also the only way to truly feel a sense of belonging. Thank you.